Imagine driving along I-95 in Jacksonville, Florida, when suddenly a pickup truck comes flying off the interstate, races down an embankment, and crashes onto the road below. In just seconds. Anormal. Sunday evening turned into a deadly scene that witnesses say they still cannot forget. The crash 5 road area in Jacksonville. A pickup truck was traveling north on I-95 when it left the roadway, went down an embankment, and ended up on Lem Turner Road. But what happened next was devastating. The truck struck a man who was walking along the sidewalk. The pedestrian suffered fatal injuries and was pronounced dead at the scene. And now, a new witness account is bringing even more attention to the crash. A woman who was driving with her son said they were only seconds away from being caught in the wreck. She described the moment as terrifying. She said she had to slam on the brakes as the truck came down, while debris was flying across the area. For her and her son, the experience did not end when the emergency crews arrived. The crash stayed with them. Her son reportedly struggled to sleep afterward and continued asking questions about the man who was killed. And that is one of the most disturbing parts of this story. For the people who witnessed it, this was not just another traffic accident. They saw a vehicle suddenly leave an interstate, travel down an embankment, and enter a roadway where people were simply going about their evening. The witness also raised concerns about pedestrian safety along Lem Turner Road, saying that stronger barriers could potentially help protect people walking in the area. Her concern raises an important question. If a vehicle can leave an elevated interstate and reach the road below, what protects pedestrians who happen to be there at exactly the wrong moment? That question is now part of the conversation surrounding this crash. The driver of the pickup was a 45-year-old man from Fernandina Beach. He survived the crash with minor injuries. But the pedestrian did not survive. The victim has not been publicly identified in the latest reports. And there is another major question investigators still have to answer. What caused the truck to leave I-95? At this point, there is no confirmed public explanation for exactly why the vehicle left the interstate.
Investigators have not established that speeding, distraction, mechanical failure, or any other specific factor was responsible. So, it is important not to assume a cause before authorities release those details. What we do know is the sequence of events. The pickup was traveling north on I-95. It left the roadway. It went down the embankment. It reached Lem Turner Road. And it struck a pedestrian who was walking along the sidewalk. One person died. The driver survived with minor injuries, and witnesses were left trying to understand what they had just seen. One witness described seeing a light pole fall and hearing a loud impact. She then saw the truck come down from the I-95 overpass, hit the ground, flip, and strike the wall of the underpass before finally coming to rest. For anyone who regularly drives I-95, the incident is especially unsettling. Interstate 95 is one of the major highways running through Jacksonville, and thousands of drivers use it every day. Most people expect the dangers on an interstate to come from vehicles around them. Sudden lane changes, high speeds, distracted drivers, traffic congestion, collisions. But this crash created a completely different situation. A vehicle left the interstate and ended up affecting someone who was not even driving on I-95. The pedestrian was simply walking along Lem Turner Road. And that is why the witnesses' concerns about barriers and pedestrian protection have become such an important part of this story. The crash raises bigger questions about what happens when a vehicle leaves an elevated roadway.
Are the existing barriers strong enough? could. Different road designs reduce the chance of a vehicle reaching pedestrians below. Was there anything about this particular stretch of I-95 that contributed to what happened? Those are questions. Investigators on transportation. Officials may have to examine as more. Information becomes available. But right now, there are still things the public does not know. The identity of the pedestrian has not been publicly released. The exact reason the pickup left I-95 has not been confirmed, and investigators have not released a final explanation of what happened immediately before the vehicle departed the interstate. That means people should be careful with rumors and speculation circulating online. Photos and eyewitness accounts can show what happened after the crash, but only the official investigation can determine why it happened. For the family of the pedestrian, however, the most important fact is already known. Someone they loved did not come home that night. And for the witnesses, the memory of those few seconds may remain with them for a very long time. Imagine being on a sidewalk during an ordinary evening. You have no reason to expect danger from above. Then suddenly you impact. You see a vehicle coming down from the interstate. You hit the brakes. Debris is everywhere. And within seconds, a normal evening becomes a tragedy. That is what makes this crash so disturbing. There was almost no time to react. The people nearby had no warning that a vehicle was about to leave the interstate. And the pedestrian who was struck had even less time to understand what was happening. Meanwhile, the driver survived with minor injuries, and investigators are now working to determine exactly how the vehicle ended up leaving I-95. As the investigation continues, one of the biggest questions will be whether officials identify a specific cause and whether any changes to the roadway or pedestrian protections are considered. For now, the crash remains under investigation, and the story is still developing. What began as a traffic incident on I-95 has now become a much larger conversation about highway safety, pedestrian protection, and how quickly an ordinary drive can turn into a tragedy. One moment, everything is normal. The next, a vehicle is flying off an interstate. A witness is slamming on the brakes. Debris is scattered across the road. Emergency crews are rushing to the scene. And a family is receiving news that will change their lives forever. The investigation will have to answer exactly why the truck left I-95. But one thing is already clear. The people who witnessed those few seconds will not forget them anytime soon.